The first thing Corbin Lowell noticed was that his boyfriend had packed his clothes. Not all of them, just enough to make the message unmistakable. 2 sweaters, 3 shirts, jeans, underwear, his toothbrush, and the old gray hoodie Corbin wore whenever anxiety made his skin feel too tight. Everything had been shoved into a black duffel bag and left beside the apartment door like somebody was returning an unwanted purchase. "What is this?" Corbin asked. Across the kitchen island, Nolan wouldn't meet his eyes. That frightened Corbin more than shouting would have. For 3 years, Corbin had covered late rent, forgiven mysterious withdrawals, and believed every promise that the gambling was over. He had wanted one embarrassingly ordinary thing, a home where he didn't have to wonder whether being loved depended on how useful he was. Now there was a black sedan idling at the curb downstairs, and Nolan finally whispered, "I owed people money." Corbin stared at him. "How much?" "More than I could pay." "So what does my suitcase have to do with it?" Nolan swallowed. Then he pushed a document across the counter. Corbin looked down. He worked with financial records for a living. Numbers behaved when people didn't. Contracts left fingerprints. Lies usually hid in dates, fees, and signatures. So his eyes went automatically to the bottom of the page, where he found Nolan's signature beneath language describing an illegal make collateral transfer. Then he found his own name. Corbin Lowell. Omega. Asset transferred toward satisfaction of debt. For one absurd second, Corbin wondered whether his brain had simply stopped translating English. "You used me to pay a gambling debt?" Nolan flinched. "Don't say it like that." Corbin laughed once, but there was nothing funny in it. "Is there a better way to say my boyfriend sold me to the Mafia? They'll take care of you." That hurt worse than the document. Corbin looked around the apartment he'd helped pay for, at the cheap coffee maker they'd bought together, at the framed photograph from their first Christmas, and understood that Nolan had already rehearsed living without him. "How long?" Nolan said nothing. Corbin's gaze dropped. Back to the contract. A processing date sat near the margin. 18 days ago. 18 days. Nolan had kissed him good morning 18 times knowing this paper existed. Corbin folded the document carefully because if he didn't do something precise with his hands, they would shake. "You planned this." Headlights swept across the living room wall. Nolan went pale. "They're here." Corbin's stomach dropped. He had no family nearby, barely enough savings for a motel, and apparently no boyfriend anymore. But underneath the fear, something colder began forming. Nolan expected him to beg. Corbin refused to give him that. He picked up the duffel himself. "Fine." Nolan blinked. "Corbin, don't." Corbin opened the apartment door. "You've already decided what I'm worth. You don't get to watch me argue about the price." Outside, the November air bit through his sweater. The black sedan waited beneath a street lamp. Corbin made it halfway down the sidewalk before the rear door opened and a tall alpha in a charcoal overcoat stepped out. Rhett Langston didn't introduce himself. He didn't grab Corbin's bag. He didn't order him into the car. Instead, he noticed the folded contract in Corbin's hand and held out his palm. "May I?" The question stopped Corbin more effectively than a command. He handed it over. Rhett read one page, then another. His expression barely changed, but something in the silence did. Nolan had followed them outside and was hovering near the building entrance. "The debt's settled," Nolan called nervously. "That's what we agreed." Rhett ignored him. He looked directly at Corbin. "Did you sign this?" "No." "Did you agree to be transferred?" Corbin almost laughed again. "Do I look like I packed myself?" Rhett's eyes flicked toward the badly stuffed duffel, then back to Corbin. "No, he tore the creditor's duplicate cleanly in half." Nolan made a strangled sound. Corbin simply stared. Rhett folded the pieces once and handed them to Nolan. "You cannot transfer ownership of a person you never owned. But the money, your debt, remains your problem." For the first time that night, Nolan looked truly terrified. Corbin should have felt satisfied. Instead, exhaustion crashed over him. He had nowhere to sleep. His savings were thin. His entire life had changed between dinner and midnight. Rhett seemed to read some part of that on his face. "The original contract is still in my records," he said. Corbin stiffened. "Then this isn't over." "No." Rhett opened the sedan door, but stepped aside rather than blocking Corbin's path. "And until I determine who processed an agreement without your consent, staying here may expose you to whoever thought this was legitimate." Corbin looked at the open car, then at the apartment behind him. "So I'm supposed to trust the Mafia King?" Rhett's mouth shifted by the smallest degree. Not quite a smile. Absolutely not. That answer surprised him. Rhett continued. Trust evidence. Watch what I do. Decide afterward. Corbin looked back at Nolan one last time. 3 years of promises stood beneath the apartment light, suddenly smaller than Corbin remembered. Then he looked at Rhett, the supposedly dangerous alpha who had been handed Corbin as payment and had responded by asking permission before touching a piece of paper. Corbin tightened his grip on his duffel and got into the car. Rhett closed the door gently behind him. A moment later, he entered from the other side and placed the contract folder on the seat between them rather than taking it away. Corbin glanced down and immediately noticed something in the exposed ledger beneath it. A number, a date, an interest charge that couldn't possibly be correct. His fear didn't disappear, but for the first time that night, it made room for something else. Curiosity. Corbin touched the ledger. Mr. Langston? Rhett turned toward him. Your numbers are wrong. Outside the window, Nolan's apartment disappeared behind them. Rhett looked from Corbin to the ledger, and for the first time, the Mafia King seemed genuinely surprised. Show me. Rhett studied the ledger for 3 silent seconds, which somehow felt longer than the entire drive so far. Corbin immediately regretted opening his mouth. Correcting a Mafia King less than 10 minutes after getting into his car was probably not covered by any reasonable survival guide. The interest charge, Corbin said, pointing carefully. It was calculated from the wrong principal balance. Either someone made an accounting error, or somebody wanted the debt to grow faster than it should. Rhett did not look offended. He reached for his phone. Pull the Lowell file in the original account ledger, he said when someone answered. No greeting. No explanation. The person on the other end simply replied, Yes, sir. Rhett ended the call. Corbin stared at him. You are actually checking? You said the numbers were wrong. Most people do not enjoy being corrected. Most people cannot afford incorrect numbers. That was the first thing Rhett Langston said that Corbin almost liked, which was inconvenient because Corbin had decided liking anything about tonight would constitute emotional malpractice. 20 minutes later, the sedan turned beneath the stone entrance of an estate outside the city. Corbin had expected armed men, iron gates, maybe lightning for dramatic effect. The gates were real. The lightning was not. Warm lights glowed through enormous windows, and 2 men in dark suits straightened the instant Rhett stepped from the car. Mr. Langston. One moved toward Corbin's duffel. Corbin instinctively tightened his grip. Leave it, Rhett said. The man stopped immediately. Not hesitated. Stopped. Corbin felt the weight of Rhett's authority then. He did not need to raise his voice because apparently entire rooms rearranged themselves when he spoke. Rhett glanced at Corbin. Unless you want help, I can carry my own bag. Then carry it. No wounded pride. No alpha posturing. Just acceptance. Inside, polished stone floors reflected soft amber light. Everything looked expensive enough to make Corbin afraid of touching it. A gray-haired man approached Rhett with a tablet. The West Suite is prepared for the Omega. Rhett stopped walking. Corbin. The man blinked. Sir. His name is Corbin. A strange pressure formed behind Corbin's ribs. It was ridiculous. Rhett had done nothing extraordinary. He had remembered his name. Apparently Corbin's standards had fallen so low that basic personhood felt luxurious. Of course, the man said. The West Suite is prepared for Corbin. Rhett nodded once and continued. Corbin followed more slowly. Upstairs, Rhett opened a guest room and remained in the hallway. The bathroom is through there. There are clean clothes in the closet. Food can be brought up, or you can use the kitchen. This phone is unlocked. He placed a smartphone beside the door. Then cash. Then a key. Corbin stared at the little collection. What is this? Things you may need. To do what? Rhett seemed genuinely puzzled. Whatever you decide. Corbin laughed under his breath. There it is. What? The part where you pretend I have choices until you tell me what they cost. Rhett went still. Corbin hated how defensive he sounded, but 18 days of betrayal had been compressed into one night. I know how this works. Nobody gives a stranger a room, money, and a phone for nothing. Rhett reached past him, and Corbin stiffened. Rhett noticed. His hand stopped immediately. Then he changed direction and pointed instead. Lock the door. Corbin followed his gaze. The deadbolt was on the inside. There is no exterior key, Rhett said. Not even mine. Corbin looked at him. Why? Because you have spent enough of tonight wondering who controls the door. That landed somewhere Corbin was not prepared to examine. Rhett stepped back. Sleep. Leave in the morning if you want. The car will take you anywhere within the city. And the contract? My attorney will retrieve the original. And Nolan's debt. Rhett's expression cooled. Still Nolan's. Corbin should have thanked him. Instead, his eyes drifted to the folder Rhett still carried. Can I see the ledger first? One eyebrow lifted. Now. You checked because I said the numbers were wrong. I want to know whether I was right. For the first time, something almost amused passed through Rhett's face. Come downstairs. 10 minutes later, Corbin sat at a walnut table with 3 years of transaction records spread before him and a bowl of hot soup mysteriously appearing at his elbow. I did not order this. Rhett sat opposite him. You have not eaten. How do you know? You have been staring at the same dinner receipt in the ledger for 4 minutes. Corbin looked down. It was, in fact, a restaurant receipt. That is disturbingly observant. Occupational requirement. Corbin took one reluctant spoonful. It was annoyingly good. Then he found it. 3 duplicated fees, all posted before Nolan's transfer agreement. Corbin turned the ledger toward Rhett. There. Whoever processed this inflated the balance before the collateral paperwork was filed. Rhett studied the entries. You are certain? I audit books for a living. Yes. Rhett picked up his phone. Freeze this account. Nobody collects another dollar until Lowell reviews it. Corbin nearly dropped his spoon. Until I what? Rhett ended the call. Reviews it. I am not working for you. Not yet. Not ever, possibly. Then send me an invoice for tonight. Corbin stared at him, caught between suspicion and the deeply irritating urge to smile. Rhett slid the ledger across the table. Not charity. Not pity. Work. Something Corbin understood. Something he was good at. For the first time since seeing his name labeled as an asset, Corbin felt useful without feeling owned. He placed his hand on the ledger. I want access to the original transactions. Rhett considered him for a moment, then removed a black access card from his wallet and set it beside Corbin's hand. Restricted Financial Archive. 48 hours. Corbin looked at the card, then at him. You trust me with Mafia financial records? No, Rhett's gaze settled steadily on his. I trust what you noticed when everyone else missed it. Corbin's defenses did not disappear, but one of them cracked. Just slightly. He picked up the card. 48 hours. 48 hours, Rhett agreed. Corbin thought that settled it. Then Rhett added, there is one problem. Of course there is. Rhett turned the ledger back toward him and tapped a date 18 days earlier. Your name appears before Nolan signed the transfer. Corbin's stomach tightened. Rhett's voice remained calm, but his next words changed everything. Which means someone started preparing to use you as collateral before your boyfriend supposedly decided to sell you. Corbin found the first proof at 2:17 in the morning. He had been staring at the restricted financial archive long enough for the numbers to blur when one transaction pulled everything sharply back into focus. Nolan's account had been flagged 18 days ago, but Corbin's name appeared in an internal collateral request 6 days before that. He checked the timestamp twice, then a third time, because betrayal apparently came with the charming side effect of making him distrust basic arithmetic. He knew, Corbin whispered. Nolan had not panicked after losing too much money. He had gone home, eaten Corbin's cooking, slept beside him, and spent nearly a week preparing to trade away Corbin's future. Corbin pressed his fingers against his eyes. That is impressively awful. I agree. Corbin nearly launched himself out of the chair. Rhett stood in the library doorway, still wearing his dress shirt, although his tie was gone and his sleeves had been rolled back. Do you always appear silently behind people? Corbin demanded. Usually they notice me. How modest. Rhett's gaze moved from Corbin's face to the untouched half of the soup, then to the screen. He crossed the room, but stopped on the opposite side of the desk. What did you find? Corbin showed him. Rhett read without interrupting. The request came first, Corbin said. Then somebody inflated Nolan's balance. Then Nolan signed the transfer. The sequence matters. Why? Because it proves intent. Nolan cannot claim he made one desperate decision after seeing the final debt. He knew what he planned to offer before the final amount even existed. Rhett looked at Corbin differently then. Not gently. Not sympathetically. Seriously. Corbin recognized that look. It was the expression clients used when they stopped seeing the quiet accountant with glasses and started realizing he knew exactly where their money had gone. Can you prove the sequence from records outside my system? Rhett asked. Corbin thought for a moment. If I can get Nolan's original bank statements and the notices mailed to our apartment, yes. Our apartment, Rhett repeated quietly. Corbin hated the ache those two words caused. Former apartment. Rhett did not offer comfort Corbin had not requested. He simply nodded. Then tomorrow we retrieve them. By 9 the next morning, Corbin discovered that breakfast at Rhett Langston's house apparently doubled as a corporate command center. For men occupied the long dining table with laptops, legal folders, and the strained expressions of people trying very hard not to disappoint their employer. Corbin entered wearing borrowed clothes and immediately felt every eye land on him. One man near the window lowered his voice. Why is the Omega here? Corbin stopped. Before last night, he might have pretended not to hear. Rhett, seated at the head of the table, closed the document in front of him. Because Corbin found in 40 minutes what this room missed for 18 days. Silence. The man flushed. Rhett pointed to the empty chair directly at his right. Sit. Corbin hesitated. That sounds suspiciously like an order. Several faces went alarmingly still. Rhett looked up at him. Would you prefer another chair? Corbin almost smiled. No, that one is fine. He sat. Rhett slid the account file toward him. Explain it. Not explain yourself. Explain it. Corbin opened the ledger. 5 minutes later, nobody was looking at him like misplaced collateral anymore. He walked them through the duplicated fees, the mismatched posting dates, and the premature collateral request. When one analyst interrupted to argue that the discrepancy was probably clerical, Corbin turned the page around. Then your clerical error predicted a transaction 6 days before it happened. The room went quiet again. Rhett's mouth moved slightly. Corbin was beginning to recognize that almost smile. Continue, Rhett said. So Corbin did. When the meeting ended, the same man who had questioned his presence quietly asked Corbin for a copy of his timeline. It should not have felt like victory. It did. Corbin remained seated after everyone left. You did not have to do that. Rhett removed a heavy silver ring from one finger and set it beside his coffee before opening another folder. The crest carved into it matched the seal Corbin had noticed on several restricted documents. Do what? Put me beside you. Make them listen. Rhett looked genuinely confused. You were the most qualified person at the table. Something warm and uncomfortable moved through Corbin's chest. Recognition without pity. He had almost forgotten what that felt like. You treat everyone this literally? Corbin asked. No, Rhett picked up the ring again. Most people require significantly less correction. Corbin laughed before he could stop himself. Rhett froze for half a second, as though the sound had caught him unprepared. Then his expression softened. Just slightly. A phone buzzed on the table. Corbin glanced down automatically. His own name appeared in the preview of a message sent to Rhett. Lowell returned to apartment. Documents still inside. Disposal authorized by tenant. Corbin stood so quickly his chair scraped backward. Nolan is getting rid of my records. Rhett was already on his feet. Then we go now. You do not need to come. Rhett picked up his coat and handed Corbin his. I know. Their eyes met. That was somehow worse. Or better. Corbin could not decide. Rhett opened the door for him. You asked for evidence, Corbin. I am going to make sure you get the chance to retrieve it yourself. Corbin took his coat. 12 hours ago, he had entered Rhett's house believing every kindness concealed a transaction. Now the most powerful alpha he had ever met was rearranging his morning not because Corbin was helpless, but because Corbin's work mattered. Corbin stepped through the doorway beside him. This time, when Rhett followed, Corbin did not feel like he was being taken anywhere. He felt like someone had chosen to stand with him. The black sedan had barely stopped when Corbin saw his life being carried to the curb in cardboard boxes. Nolan stood beside the apartment entrance with 2 bulging trash bags and the expression of a man inconvenienced by someone else's heartbreak. Corbin was out of the car before Rhett could reach his door. Those are my records. Nolan looked up and visibly stiffened when Rhett stepped onto the sidewalk behind Corbin. You came back. It was my apartment yesterday. Corbin pointed at the boxes. My tax files, client records, bank statements, and personal documents are in there. Nolan gave a humorless laugh. You disappeared with Langston. I assumed you were done here. You handed me a packed bag. Corbin's voice stayed remarkably steady. That is not the same thing as permission to destroy my property. Nolan's gaze moved past him to Rhett. So what is this now? You bring your new alpha to intimidate me. Corbin felt the accusation like a slap, not because it was true, but because Nolan had already found a way to rewrite what happened. Before Corbin could answer, Rhett spoke. Ask him. Nolan blinked. What? Rhett remained several feet away, hands relaxed at his sides. You asked why I am here. Asked Corbin. Nolan stared between them. Corbin did too. Rhett could have ended the conversation with his name alone. Instead, he had handed the answer back to Corbin. I asked him to come, Corbin said. The words felt unexpectedly solid. Because I wanted someone here who would not lie to me. Nolan's face tightened. You really think he cares about you? Men like him do not rescue people for free. Corbin hated that the words found the exact bruise he had been pressing all night. Rhett noticed. Of course he noticed. But he did not rush to deny it. He simply looked at Corbin and said, Your documents first. It was such a practical kindness that Corbin almost lost his composure. They carried the boxes upstairs. Rhett's security remained outside. Rhett himself entered only after Corbin did. Inside, half the apartment had already changed. Their photograph was gone. Corbin's favorite blue mug sat in a box marked donation. He picked it up and stared at it. You hate that mug, Nolan said. You always complained about the chipped handle. I complained because you kept putting it in the dishwasher. Corbin placed it carefully beside his files. Small grief was ridiculous that way. Sometimes 3 years ended in paperwork. Sometimes it ended in a chipped mug. Nolan followed him toward the desk. Corbin, listen. I was desperate. For 18 days? Nolan stopped. Corbin turned. I found the dates. The color drained from Nolan's face. You had my name entered into the collateral process before the final debt was posted. You do not understand how those people work. Then explain. I was trying to survive. So was I? I just did not know I needed to. Nolan reached toward Corbin's arm. Rhett moved once. One quiet step. Nothing threatening, nothing dramatic. But suddenly he occupied the space beside Corbin like a locked door. Do not, Rhett said. Nolan's hand dropped. Then Rhett looked at Corbin, not Nolan. Do you want him farther away? Corbin's throat tightened. Not do you want me to handle him. Not should I remove him. A choice. Again. No. Corbin said after a moment. I want him to hear me. Rhett stepped back immediately. That somehow affected Corbin more than if he had stayed. Corbin faced Nolan. You keep talking like I was the cost of your mistake. I was not. I paid rent when you were short. I fixed your taxes when you ignored them. I covered groceries when your account was empty. I spent 3 years helping you build a life you were willing to trade me out of. Nolan looked away. And you do not get credit for where I landed after you pushed me. Silence settled across the apartment. Rhett said nothing, but Corbin could feel his attention like steady warmth at his shoulder. Nolan finally muttered, Fine. Take whatever you want. Corbin almost corrected him. Whatever I own, he thought. But he was tired of teaching Nolan the difference. 20 minutes later, the last box was secured in the trunk. Corbin climbed into the back seat and discovered his hands had begun trembling now that there was nobody left to perform strength for. Rhett sat beside him. He noticed immediately. His hand moved an inch across the leather, then stopped, palm open between them. An offer. Corbin stared at it. You always do that. Do what? Wait. Rhett's expression softened. When the choice is not mine, yes. Corbin placed his hand in Rhett's. Rhett's fingers closed carefully around his, warm and steady, without pulling him closer. Corbin looked out the window until the apartment disappeared. Only then did he realize Rhett was still holding his hand. Only then did he realize he did not want him to stop. Back at the estate, an attorney was waiting beside the dining table with a sealed envelope. Rhett released Corbin immediately and opened it. His face changed. What? Corbin asked. Rhett removed the original mate transfer contract. My legal team confirmed it can be challenged. Relief rose too quickly. Then Rhett continued. But the original remains enforceable inside the private debt network until I formally contest it. Corbin stared at the paper that had reduced him to collateral. So what happens until then? Rhett looked at him for a long moment. Then he placed the original contract on the table and pushed it across to Corbin. That depends on what you want me to do with it. The original contract sat between Corbin and Rhett like a third person at the table. Corbin did not touch it. Something about Rhett's expression bothered him more than the document itself. The attorney had called the agreement enforceable inside the private debt network. Yet Rhett had reacted with none of the frustration Corbin expected. No phone call. No demand for an emergency filing. Just that unsettling calm. Corbin looked at the silver ring on Rhett's hand. the same crest he had seen stamped across restricted records. Then he remembered the guards who obeyed without hesitation, the account Rhett had frozen with one sentence, and the way everyone kept waiting for Rhett to decide what happened next. What exactly does formally contesting it require? Corbin asked. The attorney glanced at Rhett before answering. That tiny movement was enough. Corbin's stomach tightened. Why are you looking at him? The attorney went silent. Rhett dismissed him with a nod. The door closed. Corbin stood. Tell me. Rhett remained seated. The network recognizes a final authority for disputed private debt contracts. Who? Silence. Corbin suddenly knew the answer before Rhett gave it. Me, Rhett said. The word landed harder than it should have. Corbin stared at him. You run the system. My organization oversees it. The system that accepted me as collateral. Yes. Corbin laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You let me spend 2 days thinking you were trying to figure out whether this contract could control me, when you were the person who could kill it? It is not that simple. It sounds incredibly simple from where I am standing. Rhett rose, but Corbin stepped back. Rhett noticed and stopped immediately. That almost made it worse. Explain it, then. Rhett removed his silver ring and placed it beside the contract. That seal is not decorative. My family built the arbitration structure decades ago. I inherited authority over it when I took control. The clues snapped together with humiliating clarity. The ring, the ledgers, the instant obedience. The account frozen because Rhett said so. Corbin's voice dropped. Why did you not tell me? Because the moment I invalidated this privately, you would have been safe, but Nolan's fraud would have disappeared into a closed ruling. He could claim the transfer failed on a technicality. Your evidence gives you something stronger. My evidence. Corbin stared at him. You mean the evidence I collected while living in your house and trusting you to tell me what was happening? Rhett's jaw tightened. Yes. You should have given me the choice. That struck. Corbin saw it. Rhett looked away for the first time since they met. Yes. No excuse. No clever answer. Somehow that made Corbin angrier. You keep asking permission before touching my bag, my papers, my hand. You gave me a lock you cannot open. You made such a point of giving me choices, Rhett. Except the one that mattered. I thought if I told you immediately who I was in relation to the contract, every kindness afterward would look like leverage. So you decided what I was allowed to know because you were afraid of how I would see you. Rhett went very still. Corbin understood then. This was not only strategy. It was fear. Rhett Langston, who could silence a room without raising his voice, had been afraid Corbin would look at him and see another alpha holding a price tag. I did not want you staying because you believed I controlled your freedom, Rhett said quietly. And I did not want you leaving before you had evidence that could clear your name outside my world. Corbin's anger softened for half a second, which was deeply inconvenient. That does not make the lie acceptable. I know. Rhett picked up the contract. Corbin tensed, expecting him to call the attorney back. Instead, Rhett placed the original directly into Corbin's hands. Then I stopped deciding. Corbin stared down at it. What are you doing? Returning the only leverage I had. Rhett slid the silver ring across the table too. That seal can authenticate my authority if you need it. Take both. Burn the contract. Keep it as evidence. Give it to an attorney who has never worked for me. Leave tonight. Whatever you choose, Nolan's debt will never become yours. Corbin looked at the man who had hidden the truth from him and had just handed him the means to prove it. Trust did not magically repair itself. The hurt remained. So did something worse. Corbin still cared what Rhett thought. I need space, he said. Rhett's face revealed almost nothing, but his hand closed slowly against the empty place where his ring had been. You have it. Corbin walked toward the door, then stopped. I am not burning the contract. Rhett looked up. Corbin held it tighter. I am going to prove what Nolan did. A faint change passed through Rhett's eyes. Pride, perhaps. Good. Corbin reached the doorway. Rhett did not follow. He did not ask him to stay. That should have made leaving easier. It did not. Corbin looked back once. And Rhett. Yes. When I decide whether I can trust you again, it will be my decision. Rhett nodded. That is the only kind I want. Corbin left with the contract, the ring, and complete freedom to walk away. The problem was that for the first time since arriving, walking away was no longer what he wanted. Corbin spent exactly 43 minutes trying to leave Rhett Langston's house. He packed his borrowed clothes, placed the original contract inside his document case, and stood beside the guest room door with Rhett's silver ring in his palm. Nobody stopped him. That was the problem. No guards appeared. No lawyer asked where he was going. Rhett did not send a message demanding an explanation. The house simply let Corbin leave, exactly as Rhett had promised it would. Outside, cold rain had begun sweeping across the driveway. Corbin made it beneath the covered entrance before he realized he had nowhere he actually wanted to go. His old apartment belonged to a life that no longer existed. A hotel felt absurd. And somewhere downstairs sat 3 years of financial records that could prove Nolan had planned everything. "This is extremely inconvenient," Corbin muttered. "I have been told that about this house." Corbin turned. Rhett stood several feet behind him holding an umbrella. No coat despite the cold. No command to come inside. He simply extended the umbrella. "The driver can take you wherever you want." Corbin stared at it. "You are not going to ask me to stay?" Something flickered across Rhett's face. "Would it matter if I did?" "Maybe." Rhett was silent long enough for rain to become the loudest thing between them. "Then I would rather not use that against you." Corbin looked down at the ring in his hand. "You really thought I would see everything you did as leverage once I knew who you were?" "I still think that." "Why?" Rhett's gaze shifted toward the dark driveway. "Because most people eventually do." It was the first answer Rhett had given that sounded less like authority and more like exhaustion. Corbin did not move. Rhett continued quietly. "My father taught me that affection was another form of debt. People stayed because they wanted protection, access, money, or because leaving frightened them. When I inherited his position, I inherited that lesson with it." Corbin studied him. "And you believed it." "It was efficient." "That is a depressing word for loneliness." Rhett almost smiled, but this time it disappeared quickly. "You asked why I did not tell you about the contract. Part of me believed I was protecting your case." He paused. "Part of me was afraid that once you knew I could release you at any moment, you would leave and I would discover the only reason you had stayed was because you thought you could not." There it was. Not an excuse. Something uglier and more human. Corbin's anger did not vanish. But suddenly he could see the shape of Rhett's mistake. "You still took my choice away." "I did. Do not do it again." "I will not." Corbin held out the silver ring. Rhett looked at it, but did not take it. "Keep it until this is finished." "Why?" "Because if anyone inside my organization questions your access, that proves you have my authority to examine the records." Corbin narrowed his eyes. "Professional authority?" "Entirely." You hesitated. I was choosing an accurate word. Corbin laughed despite himself. Rhett looked startled by the sound again, and something inside Corbin loosened. He put the ring into his pocket. "I am staying tonight." Rhett's expression remained controlled, but his shoulders relaxed by the smallest amount. "Because I need the archive," Corbin added. "Naturally. And because I am tired." "Obviously. Do not become smug." "I would never." That was such an obvious lie that Corbin laughed again. An hour later they were back at the walnut table, working on opposite sides of the same ledger. No lawyers. No guards. Just coffee, documents, and the soft sound of rain against the windows. Corbin rubbed his eyes once. 5 minutes later, a mug of tea appeared beside his hand. "I did not ask for this." "You also did not ask for the soup." Corbin took a sip. Exactly the way he liked it. "You remembered." Rhett kept reading. "Occupational requirement. That excuse is getting weaker." This time Rhett actually smiled. It changed his entire face. Corbin looked away before the moment became something neither of them was ready to name. Near midnight, Corbin found Rhett asleep in the library chair, glasses low on his nose, one hand still resting on a report. The feared man who controlled an entire private debt network looked, for once, simply tired. Corbin quietly took the report from his hand and draped a blanket over him. Rhett woke immediately. "Corbin, go back to sleep." Rhett's eyes softened. "You stayed." Corbin paused. "Tonight. Tonight is enough." The words followed Corbin upstairs. By morning, something between them had changed. Trust had not returned whole, but it had begun returning honestly. Then Corbin's phone buzzed. A message from an unfamiliar number contained a photograph of Nolan in a tailored tuxedo beside another man beneath an elaborate wedding announcement. The ceremony was in 4 days. Beneath the photograph was a forwarded quote attributed to Nolan. "Corbin Lowell abandoned me after getting involved with Rhett Langston." Corbin read it. Twice. Rhett appeared beside him, but did not take the phone. "What happened?" Corbin turned the screen toward him. Rhett's expression went cold. I can have our attorneys answer this today. Corbin looked at Nolan's smiling face, then at the contract lying beside his own carefully assembled evidence. For days ago, Corbin might have hidden. 2 days ago, Rhett might have decided for him. Neither man was the same now. No, Corbin said. Rhett waited. Corbin closed his hand around the silver ring in his pocket. This time, I want to answer him myself. By noon, Nolan's version of the story was everywhere that mattered. Corbin discovered that while standing in Rhett's library, wearing yesterday's sweater and holding coffee that suddenly tasted like nothing, a society account had posted photographs of him entering Rhett's estate beside the black sedan. Another showed him leaving his old apartment with Rhett. Beneath them sat a cropped image of the mate transfer contract. The original language about Nolan's gambling debt had been cut away. What remained was Corbin's name, Rhett Langston's organization, and a transfer value large enough to make the lie believable. The caption was worse. Sources close to the groom claim Corbin Lowell voluntarily left his longtime boyfriend after negotiating protection and financial benefits from Rhett Langston. Corbin stared at the screen. That is not what happened. Rhett stood across the table, perfectly still. I know. There is more. Corbin scrolled. Nolan had posted a statement of his own. He claimed Corbin had known about the debt arrangement, had used Nolan's gambling problem as an excuse to leave, and was now exploiting Rhett's influence to destroy his reputation days before his wedding. Comments multiplied beneath it. Gold digger. Opportunist. Poor Nolan. Corbin locked the phone. His hand was shaking. He sold me, and somehow I am the one who looks like I traded up. Rhett's expression hardened. The cropped contract came from a restricted copy. Corbin looked up. Meaning? Someone who received documentation during the original debt process gave it to Nolan. Can you prove that? Rhett did not answer immediately. Corbin hated how quickly silence had become frightening again. Rhett. Yes, but not yet in a way I can use publicly without exposing the investigation. Corbin laughed bitterly. Of course. Rhett's eyes sharpened. Corbin. No. I understand. There is always one more thing I am supposed to wait for. That is not what I am asking. Then what are you asking? Rhett crossed the room, stopping several feet away. Do not respond today. Corbin stared at him. Nolan is telling everyone I volunteered to be transferred to you, and your advice is silence? My advice is to let him commit to the lie. Easy for you to say. Nobody is calling you a gold digger. Rhett absorbed that without defending himself. You are right. That answer somehow made Corbin's anger hurt more. His phone rang. A former client. Corbin answered because routine felt safer than thinking. Mr. Lowell, the man said awkwardly, I saw some things online. Until this is clarified, we are going to have another accountant handle our records. Corbin's chest went hollow. I have worked with you for 4 years. I know. I am sorry. The call ended. Corbin stood there staring at nothing. This was no longer gossip. Nolan had found the one thing Corbin had rebuilt entirely through his own effort, his professional reputation. He knew exactly where to hit me, Corbin whispered. Rhett reached for his phone. I can contact every client you have. No, Corbin. No, Corbin's voice cracked. I do not want people hiring me because they are afraid of Rhett Langston. Rhett slowly lowered the phone. Then I will not call. Again, the choice. Again, respect. And yet Corbin had never felt less powerful. By evening, another photograph appeared. Corbin leaving Rhett's car. Rhett's coat around his shoulders from the rainy morning. The caption suggested intimacy had begun before Nolan's debt was settled. It was false. It was also perfectly designed to look true. Corbin sat at the end of the dining table while Rhett's attorney explained that Nolan's wedding guests would include investors, attorneys, business owners, and several people who had already seen the posts. Then I go, Corbin said. Rhett looked at him. To the wedding. He wants me ashamed enough to disappear. I already did that once for him. You never disappeared. He removed you. Then I am done letting him write the difference. Rhett was silent. Corbin waited for the immediate support he had begun, dangerously, to expect. It did not come. Say something. Rhett's gaze moved toward the contract. Then the silver ring still in Corbin's possession. If you walk into that room tomorrow, I cannot protect you from every opinion. Corbin felt something sink inside him. I did not ask you to. I know. Are you coming with me? There it was. The question Corbin had not wanted to ask. Rhett could command rooms, freeze accounts, make powerful men lower their voices. But Corbin did not want his power. He wanted his choice. Rhett looked at him for a long moment. I cannot answer that tonight. Corbin went cold. Why? Because there is something I need to confirm first. Another thing you cannot tell me. Rhett's silence answered for him. Corbin nodded slowly. The old fear returned with humiliating ease. Perhaps he had mistaken careful treatment for closeness. Perhaps the hand in the car, the tea, the late-night honesty had meant more to him than to Rhett. I understand. Corbin, you do not. That seems to happen a lot around you. He removed Rhett's silver ring from his pocket and placed it on the table. Rhett looked at it as if Corbin had returned something far more important. I will go tomorrow, Corbin said. With you or without you. He walked away before Rhett could see how much that sentence cost him. At the doorway, Corbin almost turned around. He almost asked one more time. He did not. Behind him, Rhett remained silent, staring at the ring between them while Corbin climbed the stairs believing that when the doors opened tomorrow, he might have to walk into the cruelest room of his life alone. Corbin arrived at the wedding alone. That fact hurt more than he intended to admit. The hotel ballroom glittered with chandeliers, white roses, and enough polished marble to make humiliation feel expensive. Conversations softened as he entered. People recognized him from the photographs. Corbin felt their eyes move over his suit, searching for evidence that he had become exactly what Nolan claimed. He nearly turned around. Then he remembered a black sedan, a packed duffel, and Nolan telling him someone else would take care of him. Corbin straightened his shoulders. He had not come to be taken care of. He had come to speak. Nolan found him near the aisle. His expression shifted from shock to irritation. You actually came. You spent 2 days telling people I disappeared. I thought I should correct the record. Nearby guests went quiet. Nolan's fiancé, a sharply dressed man standing near the altar, looked between them. Nolan lowered his voice. Do not ruin this because you are bitter. Corbin almost laughed. You used my identity as collateral for a gambling debt. And now you live in a mansion. There it was. Loud enough for several people to hear. Nolan glanced around and realized he had an audience. Instead of stopping, he leaned into it. Tell them, Corbin. Tell everyone Rhett Langston did not give you money, clothes, protection, access. Tell them you did not leave me for something better. Corbin felt the room closing around him, but this time he did not shrink. I did not leave you. He removed the original contract from his document case. You prepared to transfer me 6 days before your final debt was even posted. Nolan's smile faltered. Corbin placed copies of the ledger timeline on a nearby table. These are the posting dates. These are the duplicated fees. And this is the collateral request carrying my name before the balance you claimed forced your decision existed. Nolan's fiancé picked up one page. You told me the gambling happened once. Nolan's face tightened. Those records came from Langston. Of course they say whatever he wants. No, a voice said from behind Corbin. The entire room changed. Corbin did not need to turn immediately. He knew that voice. Rhett walked through the ballroom doors carrying a slim black folder. His silver family ring was back on his hand. 2 attorneys followed him, but Rhett stopped beside Corbin alone. Not in front of him. Beside him. Corbin's chest tightened. You came. Rhett looked at him. I had to confirm who leaked the restricted contract copy. His gaze shifted to Nolan. Now I have. Nolan went pale. Rhett opened the folder. The cropped image posted yesterday came from a creditor copy issued through my network. Every authorized copy carries a different embedded filing number. The version supplied to the media traces directly to the copy delivered to Nolan. One attorney placed a certification beside Corbin's timeline. Rhett continued, calm enough to make every word sharper. Nolan removed the debt language, concealed the involuntary transfer notation, and published the remainder to imply Corbin negotiated the arrangement himself. Nolan shook his head. You cannot prove I posted it. I do not need to. Rhett turned toward Nolan's fiancé. Your attorney requested verification this morning. Nolan forwarded the altered document from his personal account while attempting to explain the debt. The fiancé slowly lowered the papers. You sent it to my attorney. Nolan had no answer. The silence became devastating. Rhett placed another document on the table. I also formally voided the transfer this morning. Not privately. Publicly within the arbitration network, with the fraud findings attached. Nolan remains responsible for his legitimate gambling debt. Corbin owes nothing and never did. Corbin looked at him. Rhett had sacrificed the quiet solution that would have protected his organization's reputation. Instead, He had created a permanent record admitting that his own system had accepted an abusive contract. Rhett caught his expression. You deserved a record nobody could erase. Something inside Corbin finally broke open, but it was not weakness. It was relief. Nolan's fiancé removed his boutonniere. The wedding is over. Nolan stared at him. You cannot be serious. You lied about your debt. You lied about Corbin. Then you used me to make the lie look respectable. He walked away, and several guests followed, not because Rhett ordered them to, but because Nolan's own evidence had destroyed the trust holding the ceremony together. Nolan turned desperately toward Rhett. You accepted the agreement. He was transferred to you. Rhett's expression became glacial. No, he placed the voided contract in front of Nolan. You did not give me an omega. You gave me evidence. Nolan looked at Corbin with naked resentment. So what is he to you now? The room went silent again. Rhett could have answered immediately. He did not. He looked at Corbin first. That small pause meant everything. Corbin remembered the unlocked phone, the inside deadbolt, the open hand in the car, the umbrella, the tea, and every time Rhett had learned to wait. Corbin stepped closer and took Rhett's hand himself. Rhett's fingers closed around his. He is not property in my house, Rhett said. He stands beside me because he chooses to. His thumb moved once across Corbin's knuckles. And if he still wants me after everything I failed to tell him, then I intend to spend a very long time earning the right to call him my future husband. Corbin's breath caught. Every face in the ballroom seemed to disappear. That was dangerously close to a proposal, he murmured. Rhett's eyes softened. It was dangerously close to asking permission for one. Corbin squeezed his hand. Then you can ask properly later. For the first time that day, Rhett smiled. Corbin looked back at Nolan standing before an abandoned altar and felt no triumph in his pain. He felt something better. Freedom. He had walked into the room believing Rhett might have chosen silence over him. Instead, Rhett had risked his own organization's reputation to put the truth permanently on record. But the greatest victory was simpler. Corbin no longer needed Rhett's power to know his own worth. He had spoken before Rhett arrived. He had brought the evidence. He had stood his ground. Rhett had not rescued him. Rhett had chosen to stand beside the man Corbin had finally learned to become. As they walked toward the ballroom doors together, Corbin glanced at their joined hands. We still need to talk. I know. A lot. I know. Corbin looked up at him. Do not disappear before we do. Rhett stopped walking. The vulnerability in his face lasted only a second, but Corbin saw it. Not unless you ask me to. Corbin tightened his fingers around Rhett's. Good. Outside the hotel, the November air felt cleaner then. Corbin remembered. Maybe freedom had a temperature. Maybe it was 42 degrees and smelled faintly of rain, car exhaust, and the white roses somebody had carried out of a wedding that never happened. Corbin stood beneath the awning beside Rhett, still holding his hand, until he realized neither of them seemed willing to be the first to let go. You embarrassed your own organization for me, Corbin said. Rhett glanced at him. I corrected its failure publicly. That is the most Rhett Langston way possible to describe embarrassing your own organization. A reluctant smile touched Rhett's mouth. The record needed to exist. Even if people question your leadership, especially then. Rhett's expression grew serious. If I protect a system more than the people harmed by it, I become exactly what my father trained me to be. Corbin absorbed that quietly. There it was again. Not an apology. Change. Rhett had taken the authority he once hid and used it against his own interests because it was right. What happens to Nolan? Corbin asked. He remains responsible for the legitimate portion of his debt. The fraudulent fees are removed. The evidence concerning the altered document goes to the appropriate attorneys. Nothing more from me. Corbin nodded. That was enough. Nolan had lost the wedding because he lied. He had lost trust because he manipulated people. His consequences belonged to his own choices. Corbin discovered he did not need anything worse. And my clients? Your evidence is now independently certified. They can make their own decisions. You did not call them? Rhett looked mildly offended. You told me not to. Corbin smiled. Good. That sounded suspiciously like praise. Do not get used to it. By Monday afternoon, 2 clients had called Corbin back. By Wednesday, 3 more had apologized. 1 did not return. Corbin discovered he could live with that. More importantly, he reopened his own bookkeeping practice from a small office downtown instead of working permanently from Rhett's estate. Rhett offered no argument. He did something far more meaningful. He became Corbin's first new client. The engagement letter arrived with every fee negotiated properly, every responsibility clearly defined, and one additional note in Rhett's precise handwriting. You said correct numbers matter. Mine are apparently dangerous without supervision. Corbin laughed for nearly a minute. Trust returned like that. Not all at once. In invoices. In questions asked before decisions. In doors that remained unlocked. In Rhett learning that protection did not mean control, and Corbin learning that accepting care did not make him weak. 3 weeks later, Corbin found the original transfer contract inside his desk drawer. He carried it downstairs, where Rhett was making coffee with the concentration of a man negotiating international peace. I decided what to do with this, Corbin said. Rhett immediately set the mug down. All right. Corbin placed the contract on the kitchen island. Once, that paper had been proof that somebody he loved believed his value could be converted into dollars. Now it was evidence in a closed case. Nothing more. Corbin fed it into the document shredder. Rhett watched without speaking. When the final strip disappeared, Corbin exhaled. That felt disappointingly ordinary. Would you like me to arrange dramatic music? Absolutely not. Fireworks. You are making it worse. Rhett smiled. Corbin loved that smile now. He had not said the word love aloud yet. He did not need to rush it. For once, nothing important required rushing. That evening they attended dinner together downtown. When they came outside, a familiar black sedan waited at the curb. Corbin stopped. For 1 second, he was back on another sidewalk with a black duffel in his hand, terrified that his life had become something other people could trade between them. Rhett noticed his silence. He opened the rear door, then stepped aside. He did not tell Corbin to get in. Of course he did not. Home? Rhett asked. Corbin looked at the open door, then at Rhett. Which home? Something vulnerable crossed Rhett's face. Whichever one you choose. Corbin smiled. Yours tonight. Rhett's shoulders relaxed. Tomorrow. My apartment. I have work. Naturally. Corbin laughed, but he did not enter the car yet. There is something else. What? At the wedding, you said something about earning the right to call me your future husband. Rhett became remarkably still. I remember. Was that serious? Every word. Then asked properly. Rhett stared at him. Corbin had never seen the Mafia King look unprepared before. It was wonderful. Now, you seemed much more confident with an audience. Rhett recovered slowly. Then, instead of reaching for Corbin, he held out his hand exactly as he had in the car weeks earlier. An offer, never a demand. Corbin Lowell, would you let me build a life with you where leaving is always possible, staying is always your choice, and neither of us ever has to earn the right to be valued? Corbin looked at that open hand. In the beginning, another alpha had packed his belongings and decided where he would go. Now the most powerful man Corbin knew stood waiting for an answer he understood he was not entitled to receive. Corbin placed his hand in Rhett's. Yes. Rhett's fingers closed around his, warm and careful. Corbin stepped into the car because he chose to. Rhett followed because Corbin wanted him there. As the city lights moved across the windows, Corbin rested their joined hands between them and finally understood the difference between being claimed and being chosen. The first had nearly taken his life away. The second had given it back to him, and this time, it was entirely his.